Mm. Om Ganganapate Namaha, Gangarabhyo Namaha, Om Aim Saraswatyay Namaha. Om Ganana Antva Ganapatigam Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamasravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashanvanuti Bisi Dasadanam Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Shivanandaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vishnu Devanandaya, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Namah Shivaya, good evening everyone to our little gathering. This is our reunion. Um, every so often we meet like this with different ideas. I invite you all to give some satsangs to your friends, to your people, whoever is around you. We all need satsang. Satsanga means the company of truth. Sat means the presence, the existence, because it comes from a Sanskrit root as, to be. Therefore, satsanga means to be in the company of one's own self, and then all other forms, since everybody is our own self, that can also include being in satsang with everybody else or in the presence of a holy book or person, any of these. The idea is to experience the truth in any ways that are commonly recognized. And of course, if you have an uncommon way of recognizing the presence of that truth in you, it's also fun. So, fearlessness, or roaring like a lion, is one of the most important qualities. You were born to discover this quality. I was born to discover this quality. And generally, you always discover a good quality through the opposite one. So, meaning to the negative quality, having experience through the negative quality does, such as in this case of fear, you, you make a commitment to finding the solutions to the fear. Okay, so we're here to discover what it means to live in fearlessness. Now, of course, this is a big subject, and we're not claiming that we're going to immediately become fearless today, but we will be by tomorrow morning. So that's not too bad. And the reason why we should concentrate on fearlessness is because that is really our true nature. And it is our sacred duty to become fearless in our hearts and roar like a lion or lioness in this big forest called life. Now, most of our lives are governed not so much by love, which we would love to, but by fear, which is the opposite to love, really. If we had love, proper love, meaning love that is truly also our true nature, we will have no fear. Because in love, there's no other. Love is the experience of oneness. It's an experience of one consciousness. Therefore, when we experience love, we have nobody to fear, even so-called our enemies and our people. Because why? Even when you experience situations in which you're being persecuted or told bad stories and God knows what, it's okay. It is part of life. Life is our friend. And therefore, things can come and sometimes stir up things in us. But the problem is, of course, that we become fearful. Now, the idea here is not necessarily to let everybody attack you, but it is to know that really one should not fear. I wished I knew this when I was younger and as I was growing up. I did not. I was pretty much trying to look courageous, and I remember being afraid and running. In those days, we had little small street fights and all kinds of things, bigger guys and all that. So, I remember my brother was my inspiration in my life. Sorry to share something personal like this, but he was like a big guy, strong guy. Everybody knew him. He was a great sportsman. He was always in the newspapers. So everybody knew me as the guy who had this big brother. And so what about me? It's like. So I grew up like this, being really tiny and not really living in a shadow of somebody who was more popular, more loved, more that. So it was something interesting because I had to learn to create my own self somewhere, and that wasn't easy around somebody who is that popular. But I became popular now. At least my cat likes me, and this is good news. So we're making small steps, one at a time. Now you know that the fear and worry both tell scary stories, right? In a single day, in the course of a day, we experience so many little or big fears, small worries, big worries, extraordinary big worries. And now we have a common worry to, worry about, which is the coronavirus worry. I think fear has many languages, and it has uh, a power of conviction of its own. Therefore, in the modern times, we see the prevalence of fear as one of the very powerful emotions. People, of course, have experienced fear throughout the history, but I think in modern times we have fears compounded and compacted in a way that we cannot even believe it, right? So it seems that the fears have multiplied, and our modern life has become a synonym for life of fear and worry. Now, what we're experiencing nowadays, it is something to actually use as a reflection to help us think about how we can step out of all this fear mongering reality. We have so many kind of things that kind of come at us still because the life has become more complex. So from the bills to pay, which are worry, if you have a partner, if you have a relationship, it can be a worry. If you have no time to cook, here's a worry. If you eat too much, it can be a worry. It can be so many things can become a cause of a worry. In fact, as I treat them in my talk, a worry is nothing but a form of fear. Now, naturally, we're living in times when there's racial problems at this point more prevalent. We had a very interesting president for the past 4 years who was feeding and nurturing fear. We have stock markets collapsing, insurance companies after us, health insurances, wars, politics, name it. It seems that we're living in life which is full of threats of all kinds. And even though fear may not always be visible, it is kind of present in human consciousness. It's there in the subconscious mind of people. And I think it's very important to have some program for dealing with fear. And the most important programs, which we are all part of, is the program of finding your true self, finding God. If you want to be fearless, you have to bring God into equation. You have to bring your own true self into equation. There's no difference between the two. That means that you have to bring your awareness out up and to learn to disengage from this whole process of identification with different things. To identify means to become something that you're not, meaning to take on a quality of something which is not your essential quality. So how can that be true? So why identify with the body all the time, the way we look, the way we, perceived by others, the way we dress, but what kind of a education we have and all that. And it may not be that you really worry, and me or anybody else, we worry about this consciously, but it is there. We look in the mirror quite a few times in a day. Some of us don't have mirrors anyway, but it's like this. A Zoom is kind of the mirror, like, whoa, look at me, so then we hide. So the identification with the body is the origin of all fear. So think about it. If you want to eradicate all fears, you have to go all the way to disengage with this tendency to think, okay, I'm this body, which is very difficult, of course, because the identification with the body is the most stubborn identification you can have. As much as you try, it's still there. It comes as liking certain forms, liking certain tastes, and our senses obviously enhancing this identification process or make it actually more difficult. So then, of course, we have other things such as identifications with our diplomas, to who we are, where we come from, all these things. It's like anything that may serve as a point of differentiation from another human being, it can become the cause of fear. So you don't want to really concentrate on differentiation, the differences. Does it really matter what kind of a color somebody has of skin? What color of the eyes is? What's his name? Bob Marley used to sing. I love that. See, this is important. We got to get rid of this perception. And in that case, if you start to work on treating others as they were yourself, your extended self, that is the best way to think of everything. You will never do wrong things if you think that other people are yourself, because there is no really others than ourselves. This is Vedanta. In practice, that takes, of course, time, takes some commitment, but it's good. Another problem, another form of fear that we come, which is actually never perceived as fear, is attachments. Mm, the the another side of attachment is fear, and the more we hold on to things, the more we hold on to a person, the more we hold on to anything. I'm holding on to my books, God bless me. Anyway, the more fear comes, right? If somebody was to come and take some of these books away, you will see all my fears come up, and with fear will come anger. I'll probably have a little, bazooka here and say, you cannot take these books, this is myself. Like, really? Okay, so that's bad. Like, okay, so you have to think about what things are you attached to. You can have a right, obviously, relationship with things you actually have. You don't need to kick the whole world away. I mean, of course, if you want to become a sannyasi or something, that would be another thing. And it's needed only as a training, but it's not necessarily that we have to think that way. You want in your mind, you want to become free. If you want to be free in your mind, you have to give freedom to others. You cannot, you see, if you get attached, then what you're going to do, you're going to try to control everybody. No, how do we get attached to, we start to control life, we start to control the events and others. I mean, of course, certain amount of control is necessary in life. I'm not saying just, sit and do nothing, but as you grow in your spirituality, you'll find there's less need to control everything. All you have to think is just the dedication, proper action at any given time. So the greater attachment to something, the greater the fear. I always think how attachments always bring up an enormous amount of thoughts in the mind. I was always stunned by it, you know. For example, now we have this little cat here, very beautiful. But uh, before that, I wasn't attached at all. Now there's two ways it's going. The cat, every time around, is around. Every time the cat is not here, I think, where's the cat? Did she eat? Did she do this? Like this. So the mind becomes strange. So you can see so many little aspects of attachments manifesting in life. So fear, of course, we know is an instinct. Mm, it's caused by the anticipation or awareness of some danger. This is how it's defined usually. So we share this instinct with animals, and it is often, even in human lives, it's often a driving force behind many of our actions. A lot of the advertising operates on fear, right? If you really think about it. For example, I used to tell this story to my students in the Shivananda Center uh, I was about to say Putney, no Putney, here in Chelsea. And I was thinking, um, I went once for a walk, and at those days I was 40 something years old. Now I'm like I'm not going to tell you because I'm afraid to say the number, how old I am. But um, those days I was 40 something years old. And there was a sign outside, something about some kind of a insurance, life insurance or whatever. It says you're already over 40. And there was like, and I said, Jesus, yes, I am. So what's the problem? And there was this thing, if you don't get this insurance, you don't get that thing, you're done. So I believe that there are reasons to, of course, have insurances and different things. But let me tell you something about the fear as an instinct, as an emotion, which can be at times, of course, an indicator of something, which is okay. But in general, as we know from the Eastern medicine, fear weakens in particularly two organs. One is the heart and one is the kidney. A constant presence of fear is connected even with people with problems with adrenal, like adrenals not working well, different things like that. So what we find is that subconscious, conscious, or whatever fear we experience, it gradually saps our vitality, saps our energy. And each emotion moves in our body in a different way, meaning that it makes the energy moves in a different way. So the fear makes the energy moves downwards. So moving downwards, it affects the kidneys, it affects the bladder. And so what happens is that as it descends down, uh, we know this, for example, from extreme situations when a person can have incontinence of urine or diarrhea in extreme fear. So this is just a little bit about this. So if you want to be healthy in that sense, if you want to have inspiration and courage, all these things are interconnected, we need to take care of this energy of fear. Some people have naturally more fear than the others. I'm one of them. And I think it belongs to Vata. For those people who know Ayurveda, right? Vata peeps, you know how it is. Vata people means I can't remember where I put my books. I'm full of ideas, but I can't really get anything done. So at least this is how it is. And the older we get, the more Vata we become. It's such a beautiful little ending to the story. But some people are actually more courageous. The Pitta people are very interesting. They're like can rise up to an occasion if something they don't like to be threatened by anything. You know, so the only Pitta people can be conquered only by another Pitta condition or another Pitta person. So Pitta means fire, right? So fear means less fire. It also means cooler body temperature in a sense. So anyway, even though fear may be sometimes, at times, natural and justifiable and necessary for our survival, for most time it tends to become habitual, and it can also take sometimes irrational forms. We're not need going into all the details of it, but I will remind you some general fears that we have. For example, one is like now, speaking in public, speaking on Zoom, right? Terrible. Because I remember the first time I used to always speak in public. I never used any machines in my life. And then when I was speaking into these machines, like, I couldn't feel the people. I never really acted any place, so I don't know, what it feels like, but it was so like difficult because I couldn't actually concentrate for a long time looking at a little thing, right? So then I was thinking, how am I going to teach? So I had some little thing in front of me, then my eyes were like this, then like the voice was down. So fear of speaking in public, maybe not for everybody. Some of you, I'm sure, is completely wonderful. But it's if somebody calls you out right now and says, okay, what are you thinking? You become aware of yourself as an ego, right? It's so interesting. It reminds me of this situation when we are singing in the bathroom. Let's say we are in a shower, taking a nice shower, long shower, winter time, and we're singing our happy song, whatever that is. I'll leave it to according to the guna, whichever it makes you happy. But then what happens is like, you may be even singing out of tune, out of beat, incorrectly, whatever. But if somebody says, is that you singing? You'll immediately become aware of yourself, right? So the fear, or even a small fear like this, maybe it's not really a fear, but it contracts you. All of a sudden, you find yourself very much in yourself. Now, of course, we know that some fears, like traumas and everything, can actually throw you out of your physical body and make you stay a little bit there. We're talking about astral body and other things, but we're not going to discuss this today. Traumas have their own very difficult path to heal. So, and a lot of the trauma has a fear embedded in them. So it's a lot of healing is necessary. Usually that's the time that those traumas come at a time when we're the most vulnerable, when we're little, when we have no like intellectual or philosophical defenses or religious defenses of any kind. We're nothing to fall on. We just have all of a sudden life just throws us into some situation, and it leaves some kind of an imprint in such a way that when the trauma happens, out of that fear, we kind of leave the physical body sometimes, and even for the rest of our life, we may not be embodying that part of the body. Just to tell you how difficult traumas are, right? It's like you're not completely in yourself. You don't, why? Because you don't want to feel the pain that is connected there. So at some point, I may share some of my ideas about trauma. I'm not a trauma expert in any sense. I was just talking about from my own experience. So fear of all these things we know, fear of not being good enough, like me tonight. I'm teasing. I just have to play a little bit. So long as you don't fall asleep, I have to say something. Fear of being rejected, me tonight, no, I'm teasing. Fear of being hurt, of course, by others. Fear of not having enough money. That's kind of my situation. Not fear, just not enough money. If I get money, there will be fear will be gone forever. No, so what I'm working on is just getting some loan for $1 million so that I can go on a vacation like that. I'm teasing you, people. Sorry, I have to talk a little bit like this. Normally, fear of any loss of a job, of a partner, all these things. Fear of being alone. I think it's one of the biggest fears today. If you leave somebody by themselves, I mean, I know some of you are also good at being alone, but when you're alone, you don't want to just be alone. It's not just a matter of being alone physically. It is being alone, psychologically or whatever. So that may also be like that you're afraid to just be. Often when we're by ourselves, we think, oh, what can I do? So I put the TV on, I listen to some music, and people think they listen to the music because they really love music. No, there's a time when you should listen to the music, but often people listen to the music because they need something to fill the emptiness and perhaps the loneliness that is felt there. So, of course, there's all kinds of fears that may come, and the greater our deviation from the path of the 5 yamas, which you know already, the greater the fear. So, if this is the first solution, if you are established in ahimsa, which means um, the absence of any desire to hurt others, then you will be naturally fearless. Why? Because when we cause fear in others, the first recipient of any negativity like this is ourselves. So then we will cause this fear and we will attract it to ourselves. So that's the first one. Then, of course, there's satyam, the truthfulness, which is directly connected to fearfulness or fearlessness, depending on the quality. And the people who are the most truthful have the least to fear, because they don't need to make up stories. They don't need to live continuously in fear that they're going to be discovered and all that. So we have lived through different experiences. We learned that. There's, of course, fear of change. And there's some people also have fear of intimacy, coming close to something, fear of commitment. For example, I'm afraid of cat becoming too attached to me. It's a very difficult situation. So everywhere I go, she's following me. So I think maybe she just wants to play, but I'm not able to yet figure it out. I'm learning her language. So all that. Then, of course, the last ones, we have fear of old age, being sick, and leaving this planet without having read all our books. So this is all fears that we have. Now, there are some forms of fear that are not commonly recognized. And these are the ones. One is obviously lying, because the reason why we lie is because we're afraid that somebody will not accept what we did or how we are or whatever. Then we have exaggerations of some forms. Even perfectionism can be a form of fear. you know there are people who are perfectionists because that the perfectionism, which is really an aspect of Saraswati in our teachings. It's an aspect of the brilliance of creation, let's put it there. Can actually manifest in the opposite way. That is a sattva guna, right? But they can manifest completely as the opposite tamas, because the perfectionism can slow you down, your circulation all the way down, that because you want to be perfect, you can't accomplish anything. And a lot of it has been fed to us by our parents or whoever was around. And so you're not good enough. You're not good enough. So therefore, I can't even start something if you tell me I'm not good enough. How am I going to give this talk if you tell me you're not good enough, right? So I'm trying to start something, and this is a problem. So perfectionism is, you know, I think the effort is the perfection itself. There isn't really in creation, there isn't such a thing as perfection anyway, because all situations changeable. The gunas are hitting one another. Sometimes things are this way, sometimes that way. Naturally, we should strive for some level of perfection, but without being a burden on ourselves and others, and without really making ourselves become completely stagnant because it's just never good enough as we would like to be. This is important also when you're with partners. If you have some issue with another person you live with, then you have to think, okay, this person, I want it to be this way. I want him to be this way. But really, what you're asking to is that they switch all of a sudden to some kind of a more perfect form, and without allowing the process to be there. Start always with things as they are and not worry about perfectionism, because the perfectionism is found in simply in pursuit of a higher ideal within what you're doing. If you think of God while you're doing things, that's perfection. Yeah. So procrastination. Oh, a big one. Same thing, right? So one can lead to another. Why are we procrastinating things? Because we're afraid to start. We're afraid we're not going to do a good job. We also may be afraid of obstacles that may come our way. So this is also something to think about. Some forms of laziness, like people, who say, I don't care, I don't want to do anything. I'm a free man or free woman. I'm always worried about these free men and free women who have nothing to do. It's pure tamas, or pure, in a way, fear. Fear is behind it. You know, even to do good deeds, you have to be fearless. Like, you have to be able to come out and do things. Then, of course, um, taking assumptions about others or gossiping about others is also sometimes based in fear, as if we may contract that kind of a disease of what they seem to have. Well, so many things are there. We can discuss this some other time, but we should concentrate now on what to do to overcome our fears. Ta-da-da-dum. So this is the best part, hopefully. Stay fearless still. Um, Courage is the antidote to fear. We know that. But courage doesn't mean absence of fear. Okay, this is only in very advanced people. Most likely is that you're going to discover is that courage is simply the working with fear and eventually conquest the fear, but it's not this pure absence. You are only going to become completely courageous when you become completely free, when you become completely enlightened. So it is irrational to expect from any one of us at this stage to be completely fearless, but we can move in a direction of fearlessness and we can make great efforts. It's like saying, I will never be angry anymore. Yeah, it's possible. For how long? Then, you will get angry, but you're on the way to become an angerless person. This is wonderful. So, my suggestion here first would be to practice coming closer and looking at what you're afraid. Is it a phone call do you have to make? Is it a person to see? Is it to hear some bad news about yourself? Hear them and live through it. Even fear it is better than to anticipate that something may come. This is what I'm trying to say. So the next practice, very good, is worry habits. Okay, you can be a warrior or warrior. I'm not sure in English the difference, but one is to be really a fighting spirit, and the other one is to be a person who worries all the time. So he becomes a warrior or something like that. The language of worry is often sleazy. Sorry to use this word. It's just very, very sneaky, maybe. He pretends to be the voice of a good counsel. Whereas in reality, it suggests some bad possibilities and possible failures. So well, too frequently, we allow our minds to fantasize disasters. I don't know. This is something quite amazing. It's like we see ourselves being killed in an accident or drowned in the sea. These are some of the worst things that we can think of, but we can also consider some minor disasters, such as you may not get there on time, or even if you don't get there on time, what is the worry going to help? I mean, has a worry ever speed up anything or bring some solution, faster than at other times? No. So what we need to do is do with the worry what you normally do with any kind of a practice that you have, where you're learning to recognize the presence of a thought that you don't want to see. So Swami Shivananda calls that a pebble in a shoe. That's a practice. So when you know how when you walk, you have a little something that annoys you so badly, it's in your shoe. There are people in Cayman Islands, you don't have shoes. But anyway, you just stop, you empty your shoe or your boot, and you say, okay, now I'm a free person. Similarly, you have to know how to recognize thoughts immediately that are not in frequency of what you would, where you would like to be, because it is these unseen uh, subtle entries of little thoughts like this, worries and fears, that really cause big problems to happen eventually. So you can, when you recognize, you can do whatever technique you use, a few breaths, some awareness, a mantra, or whatever. Hold on to those for as long as you can and let go of worry. Now, of course, most worries will come back. So Swami Shivananda has a lovely technique. He says, postpone the meeting with worry. So what you do, you say, okay, worry, listen, I don't have time for you right now. I'm a busy person. So if you want, you could come sometime in the afternoon, but perhaps make sure that when you come, I'm not there, but you can try. Okay, so something like that. You have to postpone the worry. The most powerful practice in dealing with fear is to learn that imagination, what role the imagination plays in it. So there may be a real situation, there may be a little worry there. Okay, then of course we know what we need to do. First of all, we need to control our imagination. This is Pema Chandran. I think she said something. The courageous people have one thing in common, and that is that they're able to control their imagination in reference to fear, right? So they don't. We're not saying courageous people never experience fear. I mean, we're not talking about enlightened people, rishis or yogis or super swamis. We're talking here about regular people, right? That may be courageous in general perception, like how we generally perceive them, but they also have fears of their own. For example, a fireman can jump into the fire, right, save somebody's life, but he or she may be afraid of something else. He may be afraid for his daughter, or may be afraid of something else. So the courageous people, when they're confronted by something, first of all, they remain rational, which is very hard for us to do. So they're relying on their resources. They're relying on the discriminative power, and they're not letting anything veil their power. You see, so they're practical. So they don't take assumptions. They don't waste their time on it. They're just going to. So if you want to be fearless, it's also good to meditate on a fearless character. For example, um, I'm just trying to think. One of the movies I love very much is called Braveheart. It's a little rough around the edges, but it's a great movie. I mean, that man has really hit some kind of a brave heart instinct in all of us. So you can meditate on the character of Jesus. Um, you can meditate on Swami Shivananda's character, Buddha's character. I mean, maybe, of course, you haven't met them, but they are like that. Mother Teresa was pretty fearless. Then we have Martin Luther King, fearless. I mean, we know, when you're in the face of opposition, when you can say truths like this and stand by them, knowing that you may even lose your life. Thich Nhat Hanh, another wonderful master of modern times, totally fearless, because these people worked to discover the divinity, and that helped them overcome fearlessness. It's not that the ego has a capacity to overcome fear. It is the power has to come from somewhere else. And this is what we're going to see. So the basic practice is learn to say, okay, there is a worry there, there's a fear there. Let me identify what it is, and I'm going to face it. And when facing means not procrastinating, doing what needs to be done, make write down 5 steps you need to do today, and do the first one today, right now. Don't say, oh, I'll write 5 steps and tomorrow I'll make the first one. It doesn't work. By tomorrow, hundreds of little fears are going to come and they're going to deplete you of strength. Okay, so this is not, and this is not important. So now, um, another interesting thing is the fear is that good news is good way to do this is to actually deny it. And you just say, I'm not afraid of anything. I've been in these situations so many times in my life. There's nothing to fear. Let me use my logic. Let me do this, and then I'm doing what I can. It's like Swami Shivananda says, is when you tell a child, do not be afraid. You know, the children are afraid sometimes of strange things. And you tell them there's nothing there, don't be afraid. So you're actually helping the child not feel the fear by simply denying it for the time being, so that the child can overcome this without having to explain, oh, there's nothing here and what not. Okay, so you can also do an exercise which is called no cooperation with the mind. Swami Shivananda has all these terms. So basically, you just say, listen, worries in the mind, it's not me. So I'm not cooperating with you today. Sorry, you're gonna have to leave this mind or mind. So this is good. So Swami Shivananda has some beautiful, wonderful statements there. I will share them with you maybe right now, when he says you are the architect of your fate and fortune. It's so powerful. You're the master of your destiny, and you can do and undo things, right? So even if there are things we have to experience as a result of a negative karma, for which reason we sometimes experience fear, you have to remember, I'm the master of my destiny. I can do and undo things, right? So this is beautiful. You can attain everything, he says, even self-realization by right thinking, right feeling, and right acting. You got to have all three. So this this freedom that you have to always be aware of, that is always available to you in any given moment, right? As what's his name, Victor says, you know, the even when every possible form of freedom is taken away from a human being, one freedom remains always, and that is a freedom to choose your attitude in any given set of circumstances. I love that. So imagine, like, sometimes we think our life is like that, lived in some kind of a long stretch, but in reality, in that case, is only lived either in imagination or in some kind of a past and future. Whereas when you're aware of the attitudes, of the possibility of adjusting your attitude in a given moment, then you're aware of the power of the presence of that present moment. And that's who you really are. So you are the maker of your life. Suppose you failed, you experienced fears and problems with that, you can rise again. If you dislike somebody, you can learn to love again. If you experience some form of a hurt, you can learn to forgive. I mean, everything can be learned. We just have to practice. And I think the fear makes us impractical. And if we keep on practicing, we will become fearless. So other things is you have to minimize the exposure to media. This is something completely off the chart here, but it's important. I find that if I spend too much time on the news, it really stirs up something in my tummy, right? It's a very subtle thing, but because the news only thrive on bad news, right? So that's how they sell. That's how they're portraying a reality in a certain way. They're actually giving you they're presenting you the reality as a little pill, and you swallow it, and then you're feeling miserable for the rest of the day. For example, even with this coronavirus, there could have been many things to be reported that were good nature. There are lots of people doing a lot of good work, but they cannot be even, you can't even hear about them because there's so much negativity going on in life. You see, it's a wrong type of change in the reality. For example, in regards to climatic changes and everything, If people were to remember the good people, those people putting the effort to help this world and everything, and there are plenty of them, there are many organizations there. So what will happen, it will create the hope in people, and they would want to join and try to explore, the techniques or whatever these people are doing, a way of life to help this climate comes and become healthy. You cannot feed negativity into the minds of people and then hope that they're going to become positive. And this is true also for yourself. You cannot treat yourself in a negative way and say, oh no, I'm going to be now positive. Because in the name of some truth, you tear yourself apart. I was not good here. I didn't do this. And, that's a bad movie. It would not sell. Nobody will buy it, and you will go bankrupt. So best to kind of throw away these kind of movies. Anything that make you weak, physically, mentally, intellectually, spiritually, reject it. Swami Shivananda says, sorry, Vivekananda says, as a poison, reject it. You don't want to be weak. You don't want somebody to tell you, oh, you're so bad, you did this, you're so weak. That philosophy has ruined the humanity. Pointing out the finger, telling you failed, you're like this, you're like that. It made more people fail, actually. If we imagine if for 1 week we all decided to only think positively, my God, this world would be so different. Even though physically you may not be able to change the world immediately, but you will add to this transformative process. So in this case, also for the sake of our fearlessness, we must not judge anybody. And no person should be judged by their defects, by their faults and things that they've done and everything. Everybody is, in a sense, a victim of their negative thoughts, or they're promoted by their positive thoughts. So the question is this: what is good in telling other people they're weak, they're miserable, they're faulty? I do not understand this, right? So the best guide in life is the recognition of the inherent or intrinsic strength and purity that is in people. Everyone will make mistakes. This is the nature of this life. Now, we're not condoning making mistakes, and we don't say, okay, it's great, let's everybody make mistakes. But we know that this is just part of our growth. So then what happens is the whole secret of your life, and you should find that this is the secret of the Upanishads, is to underline several times and write it, have no fear, and live in that thought. Swami Shivananda say, write it, several little pieces of paper, put it all over the house. Don't just type it on a computer because you won't look at it. But if you put it outside everywhere, have no fear today. I have no fear. And then whatever, if something strikes you and you feel fear, you will always remember, oh, but I'm not supposed to have fear. That's a good step. That's a good step forward. So the whole secret of life is like that. So a couple more things to finish up, a long story here, is living in Dharma, right, is the meaning to listen to our conscience. Okay, so that will connect you to your practice of yamas, ahimsa, satyam, brahmacharya, aparigraha, all these things. So this is important. We have to learn the tricks, not tricks, we have to learn the technique, how to not let our lower mind outwit our inner voice. You can also use the power of prayer. You can do lots of things. Another important thing is to do have an appreciation for life, because that also generates fearlessness. And truthfulness, we said. What else do we said? Okay, so here's a little technique. It may be useful to know. For animals, the fear is an instinct, and it is a guide to be trusted. But for humans, that's not anymore the case. I mean, of course, there may be some good fear of not doing something bad, or whatever, but we're leaving that. See, this is why a long time ago there was a role of initiation, and even today may exist someplace, where those people who are the candidates for particular, you know, position or within a tradition would be sometimes put to undergo terrifying ordeals, right, in order to become fearless. They will put them through very fearful situations in order to make them fearless. You know, I don't know, even a sweat lodge that we have is, it can be, of course, a technique where people may purify, experience different things, but it was also, you know, it was an effort to try to initiate people into becoming fearless. There's an old fashioned, I don't know if that's really 100% true, or maybe you know it, but the Native American Indians used to put men in a deep holes and have them hang there for a little while in order to experience the darkness and no food, no nothing, in order to, you know, face another reality and see some of these subconscious fears that are there in order to become good people afterwards, because you have to have experienced the other reality in order to really be truly dharmic, to be truthful. You have to know that there's a connection between our actions and next lifetime or astral world or whatever. So this is what it is. Today we don't need to go through these ordeals. Okay, the life in itself is an ordeal. So if you're able to go through it properly, you know, and stay positive, this is the best thing. So two last techniques. One is have love. You, the best remedy for all fear is love, because when we have love for something, we are able to conquer fear. Think about a mother who would not risk her life to save some child, you know, a child, but if it was her child, there would be no problem. Why? Because it's love, right? So when you have love for people, you can do incredible things. And if you have love for yourself, which is what most people don't have, you can do amazing things for yourself. The only reason why we have not managed to do so many things in our life that we feel comfortable and confident about having achieved is because we kept tearing ourselves down and saying we're not worth enough. And then not being worth enough, how long do we let that go on for? So we need to recognize this even when we meet each other and say, you know, you're so special, you can do this. And the people feel uplifted instead of telling you, you'll never do this, you can never do it. You, all the never, never, never has to go out of our dictionary. So basically, the love is a great medicine. Wisdom is a great medicine. And the technique I would like to share with you, it's very simple. If you sometimes feel fear, what you can do, you have to learn to, for a time being, become completely, not sometimes, actually, you can do this tomorrow. Whenever you feel a little worry or something, try to make yourself immobile mentally. Okay. So you want to become completely and absolutely quiet for an instant, right? So don't move, don't say a word, don't do anything. This is where you start to generate the first fearlessness. If you need to have another step added to this, then you can clench your right fist and take a deep breath. And then once you've done this, unite yourself with the image of the divinity or reality that you identify with. So you can say the Lord. And in this way, you're going to be able to control fear. In fact, maybe you've noticed that sometimes people who are afraid, they say, I'm not going to be afraid, and they clench the fist. It's actually a psychic thing. I'm not saying hit somebody, but even that happens sometimes, but not as this practice. So anyway, you, to overcome any fear, you and me, we need to practice every day a few times at least a day, just to stay totally immobile in our thoughts, to become completely quiet and unite with that beautiful reality within you. So that's the story for today. I hope you enjoyed it. um, there's more to be said, of course, always, but that's why we have other satsangs. So I'm just going to finish with 3 ohms, and then if anyone wants to say something, you're most welcome to. Om, 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 Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachite Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Harihi Om.